Chapter 3, 10 days later. The moment I was led to our guest room in the Earl's house, I dove straight into bed. "Ah, I am beat," I groaned. "Are you okay, Master?" asked Sway, who was currently perched atop Fell's back. The slime hopped onto the bed as well and extended a little tendril to gently slap my cheek with, probing me for signs of life. "I'm fine, Sway," I replied, reaching out to give it a pat. Sometimes it felt like the slime was my one and only source of comfort in this world. "I'm also exhausted, though, so how about we just go to sleep?" "Okay," Sway said. "Kinda sucks that we didn't get to take a bath, but I guess that'd be weird in someone else's house anyway," Dora-chan said. "We can take one tomorrow, right?" "Yeah, we should be able to. We'll say our goodbyes to the Earl tomorrow and go rent a house, like we usually do. I'll drop dead from stress before the trip is over if we don't. I'd met way too many bigwigs on the first day alone, and my mental stamina was already totally depleted. The fact that Fell and Gan had insisted on running their mouths from the very start to the very end certainly hadn't helped with that. "Ready my bedding at once," Fell commanded. "And mine as well, my liege," Gan added. "I swear, those two have no clue how much trouble they cause me. Are all legendary beasts like this?" I gave Fell and Gan a sullen glower, which Fell responded to by telling me to hurry up. Okay, just a second," I grumbled. I heaved my poor, worn-out body upright again, pulled Fell's and Gan's bedding out from my item box, laid it out on the floor, and watched as they happily settled down for the night. "I don't think I could sleep without this anymore," Gan said. "Indeed. Remarkable. How bedding such as this is all it takes to provide a sound night's sleep," Fell agreed. "Look at them, chatting away without a care in the world. Those two, I swear. And the fact that they're not trying to give me a hard time almost makes it worse." Just when we'd finished a nice dinner with the Earl's family and I'd thought I was out of the woods, they had to go and start talking about the Leviathan. The Earl had latched onto the topic immediately and started questioning me about where I'd gotten my hands on a monster like that. It wasn't a full-blown interrogation or anything, but it also didn't feel like I'd be able to get away with being vague and deflecting the question, so I ended up telling him the entire, unvarnished truth. I started by telling him how we'd gone to and cleared a dungeon in the cluster of small nations right across the border. Then I moved on to explaining how the Leviathan was that dungeon's final boss, and how it had left its own massive corpse for us to collect as spoils in lieu of any drop items. I even told him about how we were hoping that we'd be able to get the thing butchered while we were in the capital, so by the time I was done, he knew pretty much the whole story. When I'd finished with my explanation, the first thing the Earl did was let out a very lengthy sigh. Thankfully, though, he set me loose for the night and had me guided to his guest room right afterward. I heard him muttering something about how he had to report this to the king as we parted, but I decided that I'd just go ahead and leave that to him. "Thanks for that, Earl Langridge." I already had a plan worked out for the Leviathan corpse. Assuming I was able to get it successfully butchered, I'd decided that I would offer the materials that would be harvested from it, and maybe even a little of the meat, to the king and the Earl. For now, though, it's definitely time for bed. Nighty-night. The next day, I once again found myself in the capital's Adventurers Guild. Willem was there, along with 5 of the guild's highest-ranking members in the nation. The way they were all looking at me sort of made it feel like they were judging me, which was awkward, to say the least. And of course, the familiar squad was as completely oblivious to my struggles as ever. Fell and Gan were lounging around like they owned the place, as usual. Dora-chan and Sway had fallen back on their classic routine as well and were currently napping on Fell. They were all as easygoing as ever, while I was busy staring off into the middle distance, regretting the fact that I'd agreed to come to the capital in the first place. Having a group of very important senior adventurers inspect me from head to foot made me feel like a deer staring into the headlights of an oncoming truck. If I'd known I was going to get that kind of attention, I would have seriously considered spending the rest of the trip at the Earl's place. As I paused to reflect on the mistakes that had brought me here, my mind drifted back to the events of that morning. I had woken up in the Earl's house, was treated to breakfast, and went on my way soon afterward. He only treated me to breakfast, By the way, my familiars made a habit of starting their day out with ridiculously heavy portions of meat, so I served them cutlet sandwiches, sans cabbage, that I'd made for them in advance. When the Earl arrived in the dining room, I noticed that he had dark circles under his eyes. Oriane and Celeste, on the other hand, seemed to have gotten up on the right side of the bed. They were as cheerful and animated as could be, and Bastien was all smiles and enthusiasm as well. It turned out that the ladies were in excellent moods thanks to the all-in-one cream that I'd given them the day before. According to Oriane, my skin's so lush and glossy, it's like I've become a whole different person. Celeste had given it rave reviews as well. In her words, I had the most horrid pimple on my forehead, and it vanished overnight. The two of them spent all breakfast extolling the virtues of the cream in exacting, long-form detail. Oh, and as a side note, they'd also taken a moment to ask me in a hushed, very serious tone whether or not I'd given some of that cream to the Queen as well. I hadn't even considered that possibility up until that very moment, and when I explained that I hadn't, they told me that was unacceptable and instructed me to present a bottle of it to her as soon as I was able. Going back to the palace myself felt pretty much out of the question after how it had turned out last time, but thankfully, the Earl had to make a trip there to report about the Leviathan anyway, and he agreed to deliver the cream on my behalf when he did so. Talk about a lucky break. I thought that Fel and Gan letting info on the Leviathan slip was a huge scoop at the time, but I guess it might have turned out to be a blessing in disguise. I ended up giving the Earl's family some more of the cream as well. I felt a need to show them my appreciation for Oriane and Celeste's advice, and for the Earl's help with delivering my extra gift to the Queen. Oriane told me that I should feel free to rely on us anytime, in response, with an extremely serious look in her eye as she said it. Even the Earl cracked a smile at just how insistent she seemed. Through all of that, Bastien was watching my familiars eat their breakfasts with keen interest. I got the sense that he was incredibly curious about the cutlet sandwiches I'd served them, specifically. The breakfast that the Earl served wasn't bad by any means, but to a boy of Bastien's age, a meal of bread, plain soup with lots of veggies, and scrambled eggs, all of them very lightly seasoned, probably wasn't the most exciting way to start the day. I ended up offering him one of the sandwiches, and he devoured it eagerly, pausing to tell everyone how delicious it was as he ate. The Earl, Oriane, and Celeste reacted about how you'd expect them to, and in the end, I served sandwiches to the whole family. They proved themselves to be heavy eaters once again, and all cleaned their plates with glee. Oh, and Willem did as well, by the way. Anyway, once we'd finished our calm and quiet, relatively speaking, breakfast, the whole family saw me to the front door where I said my goodbyes. I went straight to the Adventurers Guild afterward, and, well, that brings us back to the present moment. Ugh. I wish someone would at least say something. Getting stared down in total silence is really uncomfortable. One of the guild higher-ups finally said. I heard he was brought here by a hero summoning ritual, but I have to say, he hardly strikes me as the heroic sort. Seems a bit feeble for that. True, said another. Not weak, mind you, but not anywhere close to unparalleled. There's no shortage of adventurers as capable as him. It makes one wonder just how in the world he managed to earn the service of a Fenrir and an ancient dragon. Makes you wonder, yes, but it doesn't change the fact that he managed it. Quite. And supposedly, the pixie dragon and the slime are rather powerful as well. I'd thought that this would be a conversation, and I hadn't exactly been wrong about that. It just turned out that I was the subject rather than a participant. They weren't exactly holding back with their opinions either, though considering I agreed with pretty much everything they said, I didn't take offense. Actually, wait, since when did the guild know that I was brought to this world by a hero summoning? I guess their information network's not to be underestimated. But also, for the record, I was never a hero in the first place. I was collateral damage. Also, if you really want to know why Fel, Gan, Dora-chan, and Sway became my familiars, you're going to have to accept that the answer is for food. It's not like I battled them into submission or anything. They wanted better meals, and they signed up to get them. They're all nothing but huge gluttons, plain and simple. I had plenty of thoughts that I was very tempted to share, but since butting into the bigwigs discussion seemed like it would only make things more complicated than ever, I decided to keep quiet instead. I wonder how much longer this is going to take. I'd really like to go find a place for us to stay tonight sometime soon. Have you not yet finished your discussion? Fel finally cut in. Apparently, he'd also gotten frustrated that the guild folks still hadn't gotten to the point yet. Oh, do excuse us, one of them said. Allow me to introduce myself, Sir Fenrir. I am the guild master of the capital branch of our organization, Bramalders. A pleasure to make your acquaintance. As for my colleagues, Bram introduced the other big shots as Cyril, Leocadio, Vivian, and Noah. All four of them were rather elderly, probably around the same age as Bram himself, and all four of them served as joint sub-guildmaster of the Adventurers Guild's capital branch. According to Willem, who knew his stuff, being the guild master of the Carolina branch, the five of them were essentially the governing body of the whole guild, at least in the kingdom of Leonhot. Cool. I'm terrified. Now then, Willem has informed us that you have a request you would like to make? Bram prompted. Indeed. That is the purpose for which we came here, Fel said. Quite. We hunted a leviathan in a dungeon, and we would like you to butcher it for us, Gunn explained. He made it sound nice and simple, but I was very certain that cutting up something that enormous wasn't going to be anywhere near that easy. Silence fell, and stuck around for a good long while. Sir Ancient Dragon, Bram eventually said, I'd like to make sure that I didn't just mishear you. Did you, in fact, say that you felled a leviathan? I certainly did, Gunn confirmed. It was a dungeon drop, technically speaking, in that the whole corpse remained after the beast was slain. Leviathan meat is a rare delicacy, but my liege claims that he needs it to be processed before he can cook it for us. He, Fel said, indicating Willem, claimed that his guild was not up to the task. He told us that the capital, however, would be capable of it. Excuse me, Fel might. I said that the capital might be able to manage it. Willem urgently insisted as he wiped the sweat from his brow. I got the sense that he didn't want the capital bigwigs to think that he was going around making claims about what they could and couldn't do. Have it your way, Fel grunted. So, can you, or can you not? Hey, simmer down, Fel. I cut in. For crying out loud, we're trying to talk with these people, not coerce them. What if they can't handle it? How could they possibly admit it if you ask them like that? I can't quite say for sure, at the present moment, Bram said, his expression taking on a rather strained twitch. We'll have to see the monster in question before we can make that call. Then show it to them, Fel said as he turned to look at me. Yeah, I don't think so. That's definitely not happening here, I said. Its head alone would have blown out the ceiling. He's right, Fel. Think of its size, Gunn chimed in. HMPH. I suppose. Is there a large, wide open space we can use? Fel asked Bram. The storehouse should suffice, Bram replied. He and the other bigwigs quickly led us toward the capital branch's storehouse. The storehouse turned out to be way bigger than any of the ones I'd seen at any of the other adventurers' guilds we'd visited. I suppose this place should be large enough, so long as we only bring out the head, that is, Gunn commented. He was very right about that caveat. The entire Leviathan was truly enormous, so taking anything more than its head out of my item box would have been too much, even for a space this vast. Alright, the whole thing would still be too big, so I'll just take out its head to start, I explained to the bigwigs. They seemed a little agitated by that claim. It's true, I swear. Okay. Here goes. When I had put the Leviathan into my item box, all I'd had to do was give it a little push, and the whole corpse had slid right in. Bringing items out was usually the same, I just grabbed them, gave them a tug, and out they'd come. This time, however, I actually had to pull with a fair amount of force to extract the corpse. It took a bit of tugging, but I was able to pull out the Leviathan's outlandishly massive head on its own. Silence followed. A long period of deathly silence. The higher-ups and Willem had practically unhinged their jaws. Oh, right. I guess Willem knew about the Leviathan, but this is his first time actually seeing it, huh? As I studied the dumbstruck looks on their faces, a thought crossed my mind. Boy, can I ever relate. Leviathans sure are stupidly huge. For quite some time, everyone just stood there, staring blankly at the gargantuan head. So, can you butcher it? Fell said, finally breaking the extended silence with a rather impatient question. At that, the guild folks snapped back to reality in unison. Bram took a second longer to stare at the Leviathan head, then turned to his colleagues. The way I see it, turning down a chance like this would be a stain on our guild's good name. What are your thoughts? I'm inclined to agree, though this will be the most daunting task that we'll have faced since we started managing this guild, Cyril said. True. The way I see it, butchering this beast is the Adventurers Guild's duty, Leocadio opined. Agreed. We should take the job, Vivian added. I'm in favor as well, Noah concurred. Oh, it kind of feels like this might actually work out. It sounds to me like they're up to the task, Gunn muttered as he listened in on the conversation. Sir Fenrir, Sir Ancient Dragon, Bram said, we would like to accept your request. Please allow us to butcher the Leviathan. Fell's and Gann's faces lit up in an instant. Excellent, Gunn exclaimed. Good. See to it, added Fell, whose tail was wagging furiously, presumably with glee. Gunn's thick, scaly tail was actually wagging a little as well, and I had to step in and stop him before he knocked over a table. There's one slight caveat, though, Bram continued. We'll need you to wait for 2 weeks, no, 10 days before we can facilitate the project. Butchering something that huge required quite a lot of preparation, apparently. 10 days seemed like a reasonable span of time for them to lay all the groundwork they needed to get started. I couldn't blame them for that. This will be the greatest project in the guild's history, Bram declared. We'll tackle it piece by piece, little by little, and see it done. Yeah, the other 4 bigwigs shouted in unison. And when it's done, we'll have earned our names a place in the history book. Yeah. Is it just me, or are those 5 really worked up about this? Great. Now I'm getting nervous. I sighed as I flopped down into the big, cushy chair that I found in the living room of the house I'd rented. Now this is the luxury I'd expect from a mansion in the capital. The chair was made from a very soft sort of leather that had just the right amount of springiness to it and was tremendously comfortable. The house, meanwhile, had come at the recommendation of the Adventurers Guild bigwigs. They'd even covered the cost of renting it, which was pretty nice of them, though it did come with one slight drawback. Now this is really something. Do you always stay in fancy places like this when you travel around? Asked Willem, who'd come with the house as a package deal. As he'd put it, there's no telling what sort of hell you'll raise if you're left unsupervised. In other words, he was both our roommate and our watchdog for the next week and change. This house is acceptable, I suppose, Fell said. The leaders of your guild are adequately competent, it would seem. That they could provide such lodgings and butcher the Leviathan speaks well of their capabilities. True, Gunn agreed. Perhaps we should consider ourselves in their debt. The knowledge that we'd finally get to eat the Leviathan 10 days from now had the 2 of them in incredibly high spirits. Man, 10 days, huh? That's the deal, right? Feels like ages, but boy, am I psych. Dora-chan said. Sway's really excited too, Sway chimed in. Neither of our party's smallest members had listened to our conversation at the guild. They'd both been fast asleep, but they had woken up while we'd been en route to the house, and I'd filled them in about how the guild had agreed to process the Leviathan, but would need 10 days to prepare first. Hold your horses, I said. They're starting 10 days from now, but that doesn't mean they'll finish 10 days from now. Who knows how long it'll take? You know how huge that thing was. Fell grunted. Perhaps so, but surely they will have harvested enough meat for us to feast upon after the first day. Yes, indeed. Fell's exactly right, Gunn said. Yeah, what they said. Dora-chan agreed. Sway wants to eat yummy meat right away, Sway added. Sheesh. You guys are way too impatient when food's on the line, Just how excited for this meet are you? My familiar's attitudes were a hassle, but I could deal with them. What was really weighing on my mind was how much this whole endeavor seemed to have gotten blown out of proportion. Hey, Guildmaster, I'm glad that they agreed to handle the Leviathan and all, but the 10-day delay has me wondering about something. Is this turning into, like, a really large-scale sort of project? Well, of course it is, Willem said. This is a once-in-a-lifetime undertaking, even for the capital branch. Ugh. I really would have preferred to keep this quick and quiet, honestly. You can't be serious. Were you really expecting to bring in a Leviathan, let alone one that enormous, and not have it turn into a big deal? There's no way, right? Okay, yeah. I can't deny it. You've got me there. I've got plenty of other questions, I said. For one thing, where do you suppose they're going to butcher something that big in the first place? That was a pretty major roadblock, right from the word go. The guild's massive storehouse had just barely been able to contain the monster's head alone. Outside, I figure. Can't think of anywhere else, Willem said. Outside? Yeah, outside city limits, that is. Remember that big field we landed on when we first got here? I'd give it good odds that they'll set up there. It's the only place that makes sense. Oh, yeah. I guess that would probably be a big enough working space. From the sound of it, the higher-ups are running themselves ragged bringing together the help they'll need right about now, Willem continued. They'll need help? I asked. Oh, no doubt about it. The capital branch doesn't have nearly enough skilled butchers on staff to handle it alone. You can't just sick an amateur with a knife on the likes of a Leviathan, after all. It's a top-class item that takes a master's skills to process properly. They'll be bringing in all the capable, highly reputed experts in the field they can find, I'd bet. I'm sure our own Johann will be showing up any day now. I guess dealing with a monster that big means jumping through all sorts of hoops. I figure they'll call in some high-ranking adventurers too, Willem added. Adventures? Why? Because it's a Leviathan, and they'll be processing it out in the open, in plain view of anyone who decides to watch. There'll always be someone trying to earn some quick coin off an undertaking like that, and we'll need the strictest security we can drum up. Oh, yeah, I guess that does make sense, I thought, not seeing any reason to make a big deal out of that information. However. What? You believe there are fools who would dare to lay hands on our Leviathan? They'll rue the day they try it. Fell and Gunn were appalled by the mere thought. A very dangerous glint had begun to shine in their eyes. Guys. You're freaking me out a little. If there is truly a risk of that happening, then I shall raise as many barriers as I must to ensure it does not come to pass, Fell said. And I as well, Gunn chimed in. The barriers of a Fenrir and an ancient dragon are not so easily broken. Then our plan is set. Gunn and I will raise a two-layered barrier. No foe could be mighty enough to break it. Good. Best to prioritize the barrier's strength above all else, this time. There's no telling who might decide to steal our prize. We will also stand guard, to be safe. Yes, of course. That's for the best. I am in for guard duty too. Pisses me off just thinking about someone stealing our Leviathan meat. Swale help. A two-layer barrier courtesy of Fell and Gunn, plus all four of them standing guard. Ha ha ha. Yeah, I don't think that Leviathan's going anywhere anytime soon. Yes. Good. Do all that. Willem exclaimed. That'll be worth 100, no, 1,000 normal guards. I'll go inform the guild at once. Willem really did sprint away on the spot, over the moon to tell the Adventurers Guild higher-ups that Fell and Gunn would have the Leviathan's security measures under control. I, on the other hand, sighed deeply. It sure does feel like this is becoming a bigger and bigger deal by the second. It'd be hopeless for me to even try controlling it at this point, wouldn't it? Hey, you know what? I'm starving. Sway's hungry too. Yes, indeed. I hunger as well. I'm rather famished too, my liege. And right on cue, The gluttonous quartet sings their usual tune. Who needs a watch when you have familiars like them around? Okay, I'll make something right away. It was that time yet again, time to figure out what to feed my ever-starving familiars. I guess I can't be too hard on them, really. Their meals are the one thing that those four always look forward to, after all. Might as well make something that'll live up to their expectations, but what? I mulled over my options as I looked around the mansion's kitchen, which was just as over-the-top lavish as the rest of the house. Making a meat dish was a given, but the question was, what sort of meat? I decided to take a look through my item box in the hopes that something would inspire me. Oh, I think I can work with this. I was sort of in the mood for poultry, so I ended up going with cockatrice meat as my protein of choice. With my main ingredient decided on, now I just had to choose a recipe. What to make with cockatrice meat? Poultry. Ah, got it. I'll cook it like chicken and serve it with a demi-glace sauce. That'll go great with some bread. I opened my online supermarket to pick up some ingredients I'd need. I bought onions, carrots, garlic, mushrooms, both white and shimeji, and a can of pre-made demi-glace sauce. Oh, and a carton of heavy cream as well, which I almost forgot. Garnishing the dish with a little cream right at the end both looked nice and would also round out the flavors really well. What else? Oh, butter. I almost forgot I was out, I said to myself, adding a pack of butter to my cart and then checking out. As usual, all my purchases materialized out of thin air in a cardboard box. I unpacked my ingredients, then started cooking. I halved the onions, then cut them into slices that were about 1/2 centimeter thick. Next, I sliced the carrots into fairly thin half rounds. I kept the carrots on the thin side so they wouldn't take forever to cook through. I wanted the dish to be ready relatively quickly. I minced the garlic, broke apart the shimeji mushrooms, and halved the white mushrooms. Finally, I chopped the main ingredient, the cockatrice meat, into pieces that were on the slightly larger end of bite-sized. That was all the knife work that I had to do, so next, I brought out my usual frying pan. I melted a pat of butter in it, then threw in the minced garlic, which I stirred around until it was fragrant. The cockatrice chunks went in next, skin side down, and I let them cook until the bottom part was nicely browned. Then I flipped the pieces over to give their opposite sides a little color as well, though since they didn't need to be fully cooked through at that stage, I moved along pretty quickly. The onions and carrots went in next, at which point I gave everything a quick stir and added some red wine too. Oh, guess I'll have to stock up on this too, I said. I'd used the last of the cheap wine that I'd bought to cook with. The dish would have worked fine without it, but I'd always felt that a little red wine in Western-style stewed meat dishes gave them a certain depth they really benefited from. Once the alcohol had cooked out of the wine, I added the canned demi-glace sauce and some water, along with a squirt of ketchup and a bouillon cube. I let all the ingredients stew together a little, then threw in all the mushrooms, which would cook through in no time right at the very end of the process. Once the mushrooms were done, I tasted the dish, fine-tuned its flavor profile with some salt and pepper, and finally decided that it was ready. Now I just have to plate this up, then sprinkle on a little cream. All right, that looks great, I said to myself. It was one of my better efforts in recent memory, and I was taking a moment to admire my handiwork when I heard a noise from the entryway. Hey, I'm back, Willem called out. Just in time, I said to myself. Okay, let's have dinner. Yes, this does taste thoroughly decent. It's so strongly flavored, yet so well balanced. You truly do have a talent for cooking, my liege. Yeah, seriously. This stuff's great. Think it might be one of my favorites. Sway loves it too. The demi-glace was a hit. I'd been worried that it might have been a little too strong, flavor-wise, but it seemed it had matched my familiars' tastes perfectly. They gobbled it down without wasting a moment. Seconds, now. For me as well, my liege. Same here. Seconds for Sway too. Okay, I replied. I refilled their dishes as quickly as I could with extra-large helpings, and they started inhaling them just as quickly as they'd gone through their first servings. Even having seen them eat before, it's still hard to believe the appetites your familiars have, Willem commented. Ha ha. Yeah, they more or less live for this, I replied. It feels kind of nice to cook for people who never leave leftovers, though. Makes it feel worth the effort, you know? I'm still getting over my shock that they eat food that's meant for humans, actually. They're a bunch of gourmands, all right. By which I mean they're super picky foodies. And I still can't believe they eat dragon meat on the regular. Do you have any idea how absurd that is? I mean, they're the ones who hunted the dragons in the first place, so who am I to complain? Though actually, I guess Gun wasn't around yet when we ran into the red dragon. Not to say that this dish isn't incredible as well. You're eating a hell of a lot better than I do, that's for sure, Willem said, deflating ever so slightly as he compared his lifestyle to mine. Well, we're sort of a special case in a bunch of ways, you know? I really wouldn't let it get to you. Here, have some bread, Guildmaster, I said, holding out a basket with slices of Therese's signature sourdough in it. It's really good if you use it to soak up the sauce, like this. See? Oh, Willem said. He took a slice of the bread, dipped it in the demi-glace, and took a bite. No kidding. That's great. Right. Willem must have liked the bread and demi-glace combo even more than he let on. He went back for a second slice of bread before I knew it. Oh, right, Willem said a moment later. About the plan to have those two put up a barrier and stand guard. Yes, I said. I hadn't heard what the guild had said in response to the message he'd delivered to them, now that he mentioned it. To make a long story short, they're all for it. Willem explained that the guild had indeed sent out a request for high-ranking adventurers to gather in the capital, but that since so many of the adventurers who would qualify were out on missions, the odds of them being able to gather a sufficient security detail had actually been looking pretty dicey. That was understandable, considering how last-minute the whole plan was. That said, the guild can't just let the two of them handle the whole thing on their own, Willem continued. They'll be keeping the request for high-ranking adventurer guards as is, and put everyone who turns up on guard duty as well. This whole project's going to be under some really strict security, huh? I said. As if it could ever be any other way. You know exactly what we'll be working with, so of course it will. Is it really that obvious? I guess it is a leviathan. Monsters like that tended to be valuable from top to bottom, even their blood, guts, fangs, and bones would all probably be prized materials. Though my party, of course, was only interested in the meat. And again, considering what we're working with, it sounds like they decided they had no choice but to call in an expert in the field to help direct the processing effort. I bet you know who that means. No, actually. Who? The dragon freak of Dolan, that's who. They called him in? Seriously? Gun and Dora-chan's archenemy Cometh. I know he's not a bad guy or, well, not a bad elf, but he just can't be trusted to be reasonable when dragons are in the picture. I mean, it's a leviathan, Willem said with a shrug. I'm sure you remember how he skipped out on his guild to sneak over to your place a while back, right? Seems they came down on him pretty hard over it, and he's got a full-time chaperone keeping an eye on him these days. Even after all that, though, they decided that they couldn't do without his expertise for this. Oh, no. Oh, no, no, no. If he's coming, that can only mean one thing. And rumor has it that the second he got word, he literally burst into tears of joy. Left Dolan the very same day too. Seems he and his guardian are making their merry little way toward the capital as we speak. Don't. Stop. Stay home, Elrond. Stay home.